In 1810, after officially divorcing Josephine, Napoleon married Marie-Louise, the daughter of Emperor Francis I of Austria. This marriage was more than just a romantic union. It was a strategic alliance aimed at solidifying the bond between France and Austria, two of the most formidable powers in Europe at that time, who had often found themselves at odds in various conflicts. The goal was to ensure peace and to have a son who could inherit the throne. On March 20th, 1811, Napoleon's dreams came true when Marie-Louise gave birth to a son in Paris. They named him Napoleon François Charles Joseph Bonaparte. To the French people and the entire empire, the little boy was bestowed with the grand title of the King of Rome. This title represented not just a name, but the hope for the continuation of Napoleon's reign and his imperial aspirations. The arrival of the child was met with overwhelming joy across France. Cannons boomed 101 times in Paris. Church bells rang out in celebration, and the streets were adorned with flags and flowers. People flooded the streets, reveling in the promise of the empire's future. Newspapers rushed to print special editions, and musicians composed new tunes to honor the newborn. For a brief moment, it felt as if the empire's destiny was secure. Napoleon was incredibly proud of his son, affectionately referring to him as "my little eagle." He often envisioned the day when his boy would grow up to lead France and carry on his legacy. Napoleon's empire was built on ambition, military prowess, and sheer determination, and now he had a son who could one day inherit his throne. But fate had other plans. When the boy was just 3 years old, Napoleon's empire began to unravel. A coalition of European powers, Britain, Russia, Prussia, Austria, and others, banded together to bring him down. After enduring several defeats and a grueling war, Napoleon was compelled to abdicate his throne in 1814. After being sent into exile on a small Mediterranean island called Elba, Napoleon found himself far away from France and his loved ones, watching his dreams crumble. Meanwhile, Marie-Louise made her way back to Austria with their son. However, life for the young prince was nothing like what his father had envisioned. In Austria, he was no longer referred to as the King of Rome. Instead, he was given the title Franz, Duke of Reichstadt. His grandfather, the Austrian emperor, was wary of the boy's potential to one day reclaim his father's throne and stir up European politics again. As a result, Franz's existence became one of seclusion and strict oversight. Though Franz resided in magnificent palaces and donned royal attire, he was treated more like a captive than a prince. His grandfather and the Austrian court imposed harsh restrictions to keep him distanced from anything related to Napoleon. He wasn't allowed to speak French, read letters from his father, or even mention his father's name. Engaging in politics or military training was off-limits, which was quite ironic considering his father was one of history's greatest military leaders. As Franz matured, he developed into a quiet and introspective young man, but his health was delicate. He frequently battled illnesses and had weak lungs. Yet, despite the confines of his lonely life, Franz secretly admired his father and yearned to grasp the legacy he had inherited. It's said that he collected portraits of Napoleon and studied military maps in secret. Many tales recount how Franz would spend hours gazing out from the windows of his palace, lost in thought about France, the empire, and the battles his father once fought. Deep down, he carried the essence of Napoleon, even as the world around him tried to wipe that legacy away. Tragically, Franz never had the opportunity to realize his potential. On July 22, 1832, at just 21 years old, he succumbed to tuberculosis, a ruthless illness of that era, alone in Schönbrunn Palace in Vienna. Although his life was brief and filled with limitations, his story didn't fade into obscurity. Years later, in 1940, Adolf Hitler commanded that Franz's remains be relocated to Paris, where he was laid to rest alongside his father in Les Invalides, the renowned tomb of Napoleon Bonaparte. Today, Franz is remembered by the nickname the Eaglet, a title bestowed by the celebrated French writer Victor Hugo. He stands as a symbol of lost hope, the son of one of history's greatest leaders, whose own life brimmed with promise but was tragically cut short by illness, politics, and fate. This narrative reminds us that even the offspring of the most powerful figures can find themselves ensnared by the cruel twists of history. Napoleon's son was destined to rule an empire, yet he passed away young and forgotten in a foreign land, far removed from the glory his father once enjoyed. And that is the poignant and heartbreaking tale of Napoleon's only son.